Well, this is to introduce Mary Seacole, The Making of the Myth. It is a new book, about 250 pages. It's also an e-book and available on Kindle. And the intention is to show the true Mary Seacole, also Florence Nightingale, because they interacted in the Crimean War, and to explode the myths about Mary Seacole, because there has been a campaign based on fiction, based on myths, to treat her as a pioneer of healthcare, a founder of nursing. Sometimes she's even described as helping Florence Nightingale do these things. She's described as the real heroine of the Crimean War, and her actual work there as a businesswoman has been entirely overlooked in this myth-making campaign. Mrs. Seacole, who was a very decent and fine and generous person, was a businesswoman. Jamaican in origin. She went to the Crimean War and set up a business basically for officers, something like a club, a bar, restaurant, store takeaway. She did catering for the officers. But now, according to these myths, she's become a nurse who was helping ordinary soldiers, not the officers. Well, that's myth. The real story is quite different. It's a perfectly decent story, but we shouldn't be giving her credit for doing Nightingale's work in founding nursing and in providing quality care for ordinary soldiers. Now, in The Making of the Myth, we see Mary Seacole at the top wearing a bonnet as a regular woman, a lady who wore a nice hat. And that's how she portrayed herself. In her own memoir, this is the picture of her that was used. It's not a photograph, so we don't know how accurate it is, but you can see she's not dressed as a nurse, and she is wearing regular civilian clothing. But according to the myth, she becomes a nurse, sometimes even a very slim nurse. Sometimes she's shown as a stouter person. She was middle-aged and quite stout at the time. But in any event, she's seen at the bedside of a soldier, which is what Florence Nightingale was doing. She didn't do that kind of work. She visited the hospital near her restaurant bar for officers, but that even wasn't a soldiers' hospital. That was for the Land Transport Corps workers, so that she was not dealing with wounded soldiers as she's typically portrayed. Well, in school books, you can see that Mary Seacole is portrayed as a nurse looking after a soldier. She's wearing blue and white, the colors that became the colors of the Nightingale School. But this isn't Nightingale, this is Mrs. Seacole, and of course it's a completely fraudulent portrayal. Now, nursing journals, of course, don't show her in the school book fashion, but they write articles about Mrs. Seacole. And here you have one standing up for a nursing icon. And this is Mary Seacole in this article. It's not Nightingale. It's Nightingale who was the founder of nursing, and Nightingale who was a nursing icon. But according to the new fashion, this has become Mary Seacole. You have the other lady with the lamp. Well, Mrs. Seacole didn't carry a lamp. She wasn't doing night nursing in the Barrack Hospital where Nightingale went by. That's how she got the title, the lady with the lamp. She was carrying a lamp at night when the doctors had left for the night. Mrs. Seacole was running a restaurant at the time, and her evenings were spent convivially with officers. Again, this is typical of the kinds of articles that come out in the nursing journals about Seacole. New light on Seacole, numerous articles, but there's no new light on it. It's simply new myths on her and new fictions on her. A perfectly decent person, but this campaign to make her into Nightingale's replacement and to have a statue of her at Nightingale's Hospital, which is part of the planning of this campaign, is built on myth, and it's wrong. And Nightingale is still highly relevant as an icon for nursing. She did research, she did policy work, she did bedside nursing. All of these things are enormously important. She's the founder of the profession as being a trained profession and having high ethical standards. And those are still very badly needed in nursing. Now the book, the Mary Seacole, The Making of the Myth, also has sections on Nightingale and on the Crimean War. And the section on the Crimean War is based on what people said other than either Seacole or Nightingale, so that we can see what independent people, doctors, officers, journalists, what they had to report about the conditions of the war and the role of those two people in it. So it gives you a different take on this, as well as there being a full chapter on the myths that are exploded with primary source data. Lots of research went into this, and there are some excerpts from Mrs. Seacole's memoir. The memoir is an excellent memoir, and you won't find anything about the foundations of nursing in that memoir, or anything on hospital safety, or anything on those issues which are Nightingale's issues.